Greetings, everyone. Gleekon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft, and we are continuing our journey through the Tides of Darkness lore, the Second War. We left off with a decent-sized chapter that described the fall of Gul'dan. Interestingly, at the end of that one, he was scribing some warnings with his own blood on the walls of the tomb of Sargeras. So I wonder if that occurs. I wonder if there's a moment in one of the games where you're in the tomb of Sargeras and you can see that. That novel was written before Legion, so you wouldn't go there necessarily in WoW, but maybe there's some Beyond the Dark Portal or Warcraft 3 or Warlords of Draenor, who knows, something. All right, so here's a picture of that. This is Gul'dan raising the tomb of Sargeras, essentially creating the broken shore. It's a pretty cool picture. You've got this fell energy just ripping up these floating islands in Gul'dan there. The last picture of Gul'dan, basically, in this timeline, because he does die, and they don't mention in the novel about his head and skull being taken. All right, so now we are here, so stay a while and listen to the liberation of Khaz Modan. We are finally at the part where we could continue Act 2 in the game. Now, you could argue whether or not Act 2 happens before or after, but just to avoid any potential things, it doesn't hurt us to do a lot of the lore before we do the very lore-light games of the first two games. So let's hear what happens when the dwarves are freed. Far from the tomb of Sargeras, the Horde continued its desperate retreat to Khaz Modan. The Orcish army in the hinterlands fought through Lothar's forces and raced toward the Thandol span. Orgrim and his half of the Horde followed close behind. Lothar and Turalyon soon rallied, recombining their armies and storming after the retreating Horde. With his fleet gone, Orgrim had little choice but to retreat on foot. Long weeks of hard marching and sporadic battles with the Alliance had taken their toll on the Orcish armies. Before long, Orgrim and the remnants of the Horde limped into Khaz Modan, pushing through the wetlands and into the colder mountainous parts of the region. En route to the Dwarven homeland, Orgrim had dispatched dragon riders to look for the Black-Toothed Grin and learn what had become of them. Some of these scouts returned with news. They had spotted the Black-Toothed Grin sailing back toward Khaz Modan. The Orc sailors had told the dragon riders of Gul'dan's demise. Orgrim took pleasure in this development. If nothing else, at least the traitorous warlock would never again manipulate the Orc race. Orgrim only wished he'd been the one to deliver the killing blow. Yet the satisfaction of Gul'dan's death faded as Orgrim took stock of his forces. The war had annihilated over half of his armies. With the Black-Toothed Grin still at sea, he had no navy. The Horde would not find victory in its current state. It wouldn't even be able to hold Khaz Modan against the Alliance, especially if the dwarves and gnomes joined the fight. Orgrim dispatched a messenger to gather reinforcements from Draenor. Whether or not the bloodthirsty clans were ready to fight mattered little. He needed them now. Then he ordered his soldiers to gather in Blackrock Spire, where they could wait until the reinforcements arrived. So essentially, I think we're already kind of starting to put our feelers out for Beyond the Dark Portal. Blackrock Spire was deep in Horde-controlled territory. If the Alliance chose to pursue, Doomhammer would make them pay for every step. He told Chieftain Kilrog and his Bleeding Hollow to remain in Khaz Modan. Throughout the Second War, they had kept the dwarves and the gnomes confined in their mountain cities. Now they would have an even greater role. They would delay the Alliance army and prevent it from smashing into the Horde's rearguard. Doomhammer gathered Chieftain Zulahed and as many able-bodied warriors from the Dragon Maw as he could. The Dragon Riders were still scattered across Lordaeron, but Orgrim knew that they were too valuable a weapon to simply abandon. He ordered Necros to rally the remaining beasts of war at Grim Batal and then transport them, Alexstrasza, and the rest of his resources to Blackrock Spire. Orgrim also commanded the Orc to send some of the Dragon Riders to seek out the Black-Toothed Grin, inform them of the Horde's new rendezvous point, and guard their ships from any Alliance naval forces. So all of these areas, too, Grim Batal, Khaz Modan, they are things that we're going to do in the second act of the game. Lothar knew that the Horde was wounded. One swift and merciless strike was all it would take to shatter the Orcish army forever. Though the Alliance soldiers were fatigued from months of battle, Lothar pushed them onward. This was their chance to end the war. The Alliance's swift march south would have never been possible without Turalyon and the other paladins. The holy warriors worked day and night, mending the wounded and filling their hearts with resolve and courage. The Alliance soldiers poured into Khaz Modan and made short work of the Bleeding Hollow. The paladins led hunting parties to root out the orcs and drive them from that region. In defeating the Bleeding Hollow, the Alliance also liberated Ironforge and Gnomergon. The Bronzebeard dwarves and the gnomes emerged from their mountain strongholds jubilant and eager for retribution. Both peoples pledged their forces to the Alliance. They would lend their hammers, axes, and technologies to the war effort. For the first time in the war, nearly every noble race in the Eastern Kingdoms was united. Yeah, so it's the Night Elves are the only people that are not part of it yet. But you have instead the High Elves. This is asynchronous because really what you'll get the gnomes very quickly next because you'll get gnomish helicopters or whatever they're called. And then soon after that, you'll get goblin sappers. So, I mean, dwarven, whatever they're called, not sappers, dwarven demolitionists. So you'll get that stuff first, long before Griffin Riders and all of that. All right. So we're set up. Essentially, we've done everything all the way up. We've begun the fourth act. We've done the first part of the fourth act, and on the next chapter, we're gonna do the first one in the finale act for the Alliance campaign. Which that gets us almost through the end of the game because, and the book's still not there yet, but because the last two parts of the Orc campaign is the Horde sieges Dalaran. That never happens. And the Horde, I don't remember, but the last one is like the complete destruction of Lordaeron, essentially. So those last two things never happen. There's no moment in time where the Horde gets powerful enough to do that. All right, this episode is in the pipes, 5x5. Thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see everybody on the next episode of Lore of Warcraft.